Let us turn our Bibles to 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. We move on from chapter 1 now. Now, from chapter 1 to chapter 2, verses 1 and 2 of chapter 2, you notice a recurring phrase and thought of the Apostle Paul, Silvanus, and Timotheus. Look at chapter 1, verse 5. Now he says at the last part, as ye know what manner of men we were among you for your sake. Then look at chapter 1, verse 8. The same word occurs. Now it says, but also in every place your faith, chapter 1, verse 9, verse 9. I say, for they themselves show of us what manner of entering in we had unto you. What manner of entering in, what manner of men we were among you. And then chapter 2, verse 1, he says this again. For yourselves, brethren, know what our entrance into you, that it was not in vain. Constantly talking about the manner of men, about their behavior since they came into their midst, and continue to be known in their hearts and minds. These people, he says in chapter 2, verse 1, for yourselves, brethren, know. You're clear about this. So it's very evident that Paul is drawing also the people's mind to their life. The lives of Paul, Silvanus, and Timotheus in the midst, in the face of these people. Now he was obviously then talking about, when he says manner of men, manner of behavior among you, his witness among them. His witness among them. And how does he describe this witness? Look at chapter 2, verse 1. That you know that it was not in vain. Hence today's message, a witness not in vain. Look at chapter 2, verse 10. Ye are witnesses, and God also, how holily and justly and unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe. Talking about his witness. You witness our witness, right? You saw with your own eyes our testimony before you. So Paul was talking about this, and it was not in vain. Now, what is a witness? You say, Pastor, why do we use witness sometimes? Why do we use testimony sometimes? Now, we are witnesses for Christ. Witnesses is a bigger, overarching description of who we are in this world. We are witnesses for Christ. Means we have known personally who he is. A witness has first-hand experience. We are witnesses that has known his working in our lives. We are witnesses not only to the faith, the Christian faith, knowing the Christian faith firsthand, but also knowing the work of God in our lives as we go through trials. We are witnesses. A witness is really who you are. Testimony is what you do. You have to then understand why I want to choose this word witness. Witness. It is far bigger than simply, well, do this, do that, talk about this, talk about that. It is really who you are, a witness for Christ. People who often use this word witness, well, you hear it in, let's go witnessing. It's usually about evangelism, all right? Witnessing is far more than evangelism. Yes, when you go forth to evangelize, they like to use this word witness in the olden days especially, maybe among some churches still. It is really to go and tell people what they know about God and what God has done in their lives. But here, you notice one thing. Paul repeatedly talks about manner, our manner before you, how we behave holily, justly, unblameably among you that believe. Look at chapter 2, verse 10. Among you that believe. Now, a witness is also to bear testimony among believers. So number one, it is not about just going evangelism. It has to do, and in its repeated emphasis, significantly with your life before believers as well. Paul spoke of his example. Look at chapter 6, and he became followers of us, his examples. So that is one of the things, some of the things we must remember. So we just defined what is a witness. The Christian bearing a testimony for God by the way you live. Now, but then, so that's the first one. What is a witness? Now, the second thing about witness that we must realize is, look at chapter 2, verse 1, that you know that it, what is it? It, talking about their manner of life, talking about their witness, it was not in vain. Their witness was not in vain. So one of the things you have to realize that witness can be vain witnesses. There can be vain witnesses, vain testimonies. And he said, ours was not that kind. Now, what is a vain testimony? This word vain here means literally empty. Empty. Means there is a form, but it's empty. Devoid of what? Empty of what? Empty of spiritual effects. Empty of spiritual fruitfulness. Empty of genuineness. When it is devoid of sincerity and genuineness, it will not bear spiritual fruit. There are this kind of witness, right? The Pharisees, they thought they were great witnesses, right? And people thought they were great witnesses. But they focus only on the outward acts. Christ always called them white sepulchres. Whited sepulchres means these tombstones, white, very nice. But why tombstones? On the outside, these tombstones look very white. Why tombstones? They are dead inside. Just bones, rotting, flesh, that's all. So Christians, we must not have the wrong idea. Just because we come to church every week, and you say, I compare with people in other churches. I come a few times a week. I compare with other Christians. I come for prayer meeting. I bring my family. I do DHW. I take FEBC courses. Does it mean you're a witness? Or does it mean you're vain? Or are you a vain witness? External works, which is why I rather chose the word instead of a testimony not in vain. All right? A witness not in vain is more important because witness describes who you really are. Testimonies can be just your outward acts, your words, that is all. Vain testimonies. We have to ask ourselves, are we vain testimonies? Do not just think that outward words and acts. You can say a lot of spiritual things. You think you are a fruitful witness. Now, witnessing is not just about words. Look at how Paul puts it. Look at chapter 1, verse 5. For our gospel came not unto you only, in word only. Paul wants to make it very clear. Our witness in your presence was not just preaching, teaching, telling you things from the Bible, and even making it very precise. You can attend a very, very sound and theologically precise church. Doesn't mean you are a witness. Now then he says this. As you know, chapter 1, verse 5, as you know the manner of men. He made sure that they understood. Our witness is not just in words. You can say big swelling words to people. And then you think you're a witness. No, witness includes the manner of life. The manner of life. So testimony can be just outward, that's all. All right? So that is the second thing we must remember. The first is, it is really our life before men. And the second, there is such a thing as a vain witness. Christians, here I ask you this. All these years in your life, has it impacted, transformed, changed anyone at all? You can be someone who's been attending, a sound church for decades. But the people that you engage somehow never grow spiritually. Or worse, they became worse. They became worse. Because witnesses are not just, I come to church, I speak with you. Witnesses are your life that really changes people with fruitfulness. Remember that. Look at how Paul puts it in chapter 1, verse 6. And ye became followers of us and of the Lord. So he always clarifies that. And because of how they followed their witness, the witness of this man, verse 7, so that you were examples to all that believe. And from you, verse 8, sounded forth, and so on and so forth. So that, verse 8, we need not to speak of anything. Their lives were transformed. Their lives were full of fruits. Here, the Bible makes it clear. Your witness can be either considered, can be defined as a vain witness or a fruitful witness. Be honest. If not, and you ask yourself, Lord, actually it's true. I say a lot of things. I help a lot of people. I'm very consistent in all the Christian things. On the outward, I have a testimony. But Lord, somehow my witness is vain. Why, oh Lord? Why? We answer that question when we ask ourselves, all right? In the last part, how not to be a vain witness, but a fruitful witness. Now, we just considered what is a witness. Now we want to consider why must we not have a vain witness? Why must we not have a vain witness? Why? I want to consider 3 reasons. The first one. Now, I will need you to turn to 3 passages because I need you to understand. I need you to have your personal convictions that you must be a witness for God. You must see it from God's word. You must build this personal conviction. So I must turn you to scriptures. The first one, Matthew chapter 5. Matthew chapter 5. Now let's read, I'll read to you, right? Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. Ye are the salt of the earth. But if the salt have lost his savour, wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, vain, but to be cast out and to be trodden under the foot of men. So serious. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Cannot. Not supposed to be. Verse 15, neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And it giveth light unto all that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works, testimony, witness, and glorify your Father which is in heaven, the purpose of witnessing. Now here, God makes something very clear to the disciples. Verse 13, ye are. When you are saved, that is what you are. You can think that I am sugar, but God says, no, you are salt. You are. This is what you are to be now, supposed to be, and should be. Verse 14, ye are, again, ye are. God is describing, characterizing, after salvation, what a believer is. Salt heals. Salt adds savor. Salt revives. Salt brings health. Now, salt in those days are extremely important for life. This term about, we often say, are you worth your salt? Comes from this situation. The Romans, the Roman soldiers, one of their salary portion is salt. Is this that precious? So Christ used this example. Salt. This is how precious it is. The usefulness. Light, verse 14, light of the world. Light of the world. Please be very clear. The world. Then he says, it cannot be hid. It is not supposed to. Your witness cannot be ignored. You are, number one. And you cannot not be that. Verse 15. Then he comes to being sarcastic to wake the disciples, us, up. Neither do men light a candle and put it in a bushel, but on a candlestick. God says it is the most ridiculous thing to light a candle and then cover it up. But you put it high on a bushel. Now God is saying, don't call me a fool when I saved you. When you say, no, I don't want to be salt, I don't want to be light, I don't really care, God is really saying, do you think I'm like the idiots that light a candle and then let it be covered? No. Look at verse 15. Put it on a candlestick that it giveth light again, witness, to all that are in the house. In the house means as long as you are there, somewhere, I saved you for you to be a light to men. Then let your light so shine. So shine means this. This is how your life so ought to be. Let your light so shine. Now, Christians, my first point is this about why we must not be a vain witness. To say that we do not care to be a witness is to tell God, God, you waste your blood on me, God. After you saved me with your precious blood, I don't intend to be the reason for which you shed your blood for me. Christians, we are witnesses, whether you want to be or not, whether you think it is negotiable and is a choice or not. You are the moment you are saved. Because, look at verse 16, and glorify your Father which is in heaven. God says the chief end of man is to glorify God. Witnessing is supposed to do that. So when we say, my chief end is to glorify God, my children's chief end to glorify God, you are saying this, God, I will be a witness for you. Christians, after Christ's resurrection, turn to Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Christ reminded them. Acts chapter 1, verse 8. Christ reminded them. I need this to be crystal clear in our hearts and minds. Chapter 1, verse 8. Let me read Acts chapter 1, verse 8 to you. But ye shall receive power after that. The Holy Ghost is come upon you. And ye shall be witnesses unto me, both in Jerusalem and in all Judea, in Samaria, and unto the uttermost part of the earth. The world, light to the world. Christ's parting words were this: you are witnesses. His final reminder to the believers standing before him who were saved: you are Again, summarizing, you are salt, you are light, you shall be. Right? You shall be. That is what you are. Witnesses to me. Now, Christians, the point then is this, putting it more plainly. Being a witness is not a choice, but is an expectation of God. Each of us are saved to fulfill our chief end. Witnessing, being a witness is not just for full-time workers, not for pastors to bear good witnesses, for full-time workers to be good witnesses. The believers, now we can turn back to 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, look at chapter 1. Verse 6, and you became followers of us. They followed their footsteps, followed their testimony, followed their witness. Verse 7, so that you were examples to all. They became witnesses. Did they say, oh, Paul, you, Timotheus, and Silas, of course you are, you're the apostle, they're full-time workers. Well, we expect you to bear witness. No, they understood in their hearts. We were supposed to follow the examples of these witnesses because we are witnesses. And they indeed became witnesses. Verse 8. How did they put it? Sounded out the word, not only in Macedonia, but spread abroad, far and wide, the world. The lay Christians understood that. We must not think for a moment our manner of life among people, believers especially, unbelievers of course also, is a personal choice of whether we want to be a witness or not. We must not think for a moment, well, it's my business whether I want to be a godly witness or not. You cannot say, well, I did not ask you to look at my life. Christians literally say that. I did not ask people to look at my lives. You are witness. You are light. Whether you want to accept it or not. You cannot even say or think. Well, others can choose to be witnesses, but it's up to them. Christians can say this. I'm ready to admit I'm not a good testimony. I don't pretend. I know I'm not a good witness. Saying that as if when they say that, then their conscience is clear. Saying that as if that they have a right then therefore to excuse themselves. Now, is that what is in your mind, adults, teens, fathers, mothers? Other families want to live that life, it's up to them. But please don't impose your views on me. There are Christians who say that. Oh, these church people are very good at imposing their life. I don't want to choose that kind of life. Don't impose it on me. You are a light. Sometimes when candles, they are weakening or blown out, what do people do? They take another candle and then they try to ignite the one that is either dimming or has gone out. That is a witness. That is what a witness does. You cannot say, it is my choice. I don't want to live such a holy life. I don't need my family to be like that. It's our choice. They want to be light. It's up to them. But please, don't feel that I need to live like you. Now, listen carefully. Now, it comes to the third one, all right? Comes to the third one. Second reason, right? The first reason is it is non-negotiable. The second is, why must I be a witness? Look at chapter 1, verses 6 to 7. And you became followers of us. Verse 7. And you were examples to all. This tells us that God intends to use witnesses to transform lives. That is the second reason why. God here makes it very clear from the life and from what happened in the church. God uses our witness to transform lives. Christ is no longer on earth. We studied in BBK this morning. Christ said, greater works will you do than me. Because you are going to go far and wide. I am only now doing this in What he told the disciples? In Jerusalem, you will go to Galilee. You will go to further parts. You will go to the uttermost part. You will do greater work than me because you will remain behind, because you will be the light. You will be the witness. Not me anymore. But I will help you to be that witness. So Christians, God intends to use us. God also, and listen to this carefully, when Paul said, you became followers. Paul is saying this. God expects you to follow. So you cannot say, don't impose on me. It is my choice. You cannot. Because God says, you are supposed to follow. You're supposed to be emulating those that emulate Christ. Not, I have a choice not to be a witness like them. You do not have a choice. Now I hope you see very clearly from scriptures. Number one, you are salt. You are light. Number two, you shall be witnesses unto me. Salvation means that. Don't think about salvation. Why God left me on earth is to evangelize. Evangelize is just part of your life, which is why a lot of Christians, I'm evangelizing, I'm trying to reach souls, and that is enough. No, witnessing is far bigger than that. Witnessing is look at chapter 2, verse 10. How you behave holily, justly, unblameably. Unblameably means as sinless as possible. And he talked about we behaved among you. You must behave that way. And you must accept that God uses lives to transform people because Christ is no longer on earth. So you must respond to lives. Not say that is their standard, that is not my standard. You cannot. Church is this. From 1 Thessalonians chapter 1. Now, just because God has saved us, we are already supposed to fulfill that. But God shows us in scriptures to stir us to be witnesses. Even if God doesn't explain, doesn't say anything, we must be witnesses. We cannot argue. But here God shows how your witness can transform lives to be witnesses to glorify God. That is the greatest privilege, the greatest joy of a Christian life. God, why must I be? Because God intends to use my saved life to transform people. God intends to use other people's life to transform me. Bringing up your children is not just about getting them to be saved. Please understand this, parents. It is not just constantly worried about are they saved, are they not saved. Preach the gospel, are they saved, are they not saved. They are to be witnesses if they are saved. When they are not saved, your main concern is not salvation, because salvation is of the Lord. Election is of the Lord. Your main concern is what am I doing such that when it is saved, since it is saved, it is a witness on earth. It is a light. It is salt. Now, Christian, it is same for your children. It's non-negotiable. You must not think, they're too young. No, they are witnesses already if they are saved. Your main concern is not just to make them outwardly obey. Have a testimony among people. Don't shame me in church. Behave. You are only teaching them to be moral people. You're only teaching them not to embarrass you. You are not teaching them to be witnesses. You are teaching them to be Pharisees. That is all. And young ones, when your parents try to make you witnesses, you must know, I buck against it, I don't like it, but I am light. I am salt. I am and I shall be, I must be witnesses unto Christ. That is who I am. That is it. Be witnesses, all right? Now, both adults and children must understand and be very conscious of our responsibility to be witnesses. Then the third reason why I must be witnesses and not be vain ones is this: because witnesses either stir people to be witnesses to fulfill their chief end, or, which we see here, but since Paul brought up vain witnesses, it also means that witnesses, the vain kind, can be destructive to others. Why must I not be vain witnesses? Because vain witnesses can be destructive to the lives of others. Vain witnesses stumble others. Vain witnesses, like the Pharisees, are saying this: just do these things. That is all. But when people really look at their lives, they don't tally what they say. That is where Christianity becomes a sham to them. Vain witnesses bring shame to God's name. Until today, you often hear, if Christians are like that, I don't want to be a Christian. I will never let my children be a Christian. They are more carnal, more worldly, more sensuous, more wicked and sinful than normal people. Your witness, just because you go to church, just because you attend Bible study, but what you are, people know. So please do not just think, I am in a sound church, I go to church frequently, I'm participating in everything, I am a good witness. No, it can be a destructive witness. Now you know these verses very well. This verse very well. Matthew 18:6. But whoso shall offend, that means stumble, the word is stumble. Who shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, believers? It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Now these are very ugly things to say. Why would God make such severe statements and warnings that are so, unkind, and really, should God say such things? Better for him to hang a millstone, have this heavy stone hang on his head, drop into the sea, drown into the sea, means die, basically go and die. Right? We say things like that, go and die. And not only that, drown in the depth of the sea, never to be seen again. Go and die and never be seen again. What horrible things to say, we think in our minds. Why must God make it so serious? Number one, because you are saved to be witnesses. Do you understand that? Your chief end is to glorify God. If you don't want to do that, you may as well die. We are left on earth to be witnesses. If you don't want to be, the only other thing that will happen when you don't want to be is you will stumble. And he's specifically talking about stumble, the little ones which believe in me. Now God does not make such severe pronouncement of curse unless it's something that is very significant that we need to know this is how serious and real it is. Being a witness is serious and real. You cannot think it's negotiable. If it were, God would not use this kind of language. So Christians, why must I not be a vain witness? Because you either are a fruitful witness. If you're not a fruitful witness, means you are just having the outward form you say, but your life, in reality, who you are, and people can see, you are not what a Christian should be. You offend. You stumble. These little ones, especially those that are young in the faith, immature, do not know certain doctrines. Christians, Matthew 18:6 emphasizes the importance of not stumbling, means not being a vain witness. Stumbling, being a vain witness means you live a certain way, but actually your life says something else. That is the worst stumbling. Then, of course, there's not a vain witness, but a vile witness. A vile witness gets worse. You just simply say, I don't need I don't intend to be a witness. I will just still sin this, sin that. I will say things like, well, I really don't care. This part of the Bible, I obey. This part, I don't want it. That is a vile witness. You tell people openly, I am a Christian, but please know this. There are certain teachings that I don't intend to obey. Other Christians will think, oh, you mean we can live like that? I didn't know. I thought we must obey everything. No. There are some things I don't care. You are the vilest witness. The young ones will learn that. You begin to tell them, there's no need to be so serious. Whenever you say things like that, think of Matthew 18:6. When you say these things, you're really telling God, I say again, I don't really care if you wasted your blood on me. I just want to go to heaven. That is all I care about. Being a witness, I don't really care. But God shed his blood not to save you from hell. God shed his blood to save you to be a witness. Now, moreover, why a vain witness? Why you cannot be a vain witness? Because you will lose all moral authority over others, and especially your children, your spouse. You will lose all moral authority. Now, losing moral authority, being a vain witness, means this. That people see a disconnect between what you confess to believe and constantly teach your children and tell them, don't do this, don't do that, don't be. But they see a big disconnect between what you say and what you tell them to do. And as if you believe in it yourself, they see the disconnect between that and your daily actions and choices. They see the big disconnect. Your choices, your actions versus what you keep saying to them. Many Christian children, or rather I would say many children growing up in Christian family, again and again and again and again, in surveys in the US, in many countries, they stop becoming Christians because they view the Christian faith as a hypocritical and external act, external focused religion, and that is all. In other words, it's about saying external acts, but not a transformed life. There is no transformation, just an outward religion. If that is all it is, why do I want to be in this religion? The moment they grow up, they leave the church. Very often what is cited is they see the hypocrisy in this religion. Stumbled, the little ones. Better to go and die and never be seen again and never have existed. At least you would not have stumbled people. Die and never appear again so no one have any memory of you to be stumbled by. Be careful of thinking that my children don't see. Your children notice nuances far more than you understand or realize or can believe. They smell hypocrisy 1,000 miles away because they are themselves always trying to find how to deceive you. They will see, they will know. Parents, you will lose all moral authority. You stumble them. Because you tell them to do something, you do another. After some time, they will just say, why do you do this? Daddy, you don't tell mommy to do that, but you tell me to do this. Daddy, mommy, you don't do that. Why should I do this? And you keep telling me this and that. They will just see this religion as the most fake religion on earth, and it is just pure religion, that's all. They leave the faith. Even today, when you see our own worshippers, we found an old church photo album during packing last week. I was going through it with Elder Leong. So many are no longer in church. So many has left church. Many of them are their children. The parents may have been here for some time, maybe still here, but their children are not anymore. I do not know the background. Maybe they were good witnesses, I don't know. But what I want you to know is this. Let it not ever be your home where because of your witnesses, your witness, your child leaves the faith. Let it not be that. Because remember Matthew 18:6. Same for other Christians. Look, right? Baptism, all these people kneeling. Where are all these young people? I remember someone shared, Pastor, when my dad shared the gospel to me, I wanted to be holy. And his idea of Christianity was, this is a holy religion. And then he came to church. And then all he saw in our church was, back then, carnal, worldly witnesses. Brought him to places that he should not be in. He met friends, people, unbelievers that influenced him, that led him out of church for many years. Why? Witnesses failed. So don't just think, your parents. We are witnesses as singles, as elderlies. You understand why it is so serious? Because the moment is full of empty talk, no action. They will see. And say, what? They will see and they say, why do I want to continue in this? Now, just because I want to emphasize, just because you're in church, just because you dress conservatively, just because you sing hymns, just because you attend everything, it does not mean you are a witness. At home, you tell your children not to waste time, you play computer games all the time. But you bring them to church, so what they are developing is, this is Christianity. You keep hearing what is sin, but when we go home, Daddy and Mommy practices those sin, but tells us to pray, brings us to pray. Do you think that is the most dangerous witness? Because when they grow up, they will be worse. You tell them, don't love the world, but your choices, by what you focus on, they're all carnal. The choices you make for them are carnal. No, be more focused in your studies, be more focused in your ECA. After that, too tired to go to church, never mind, don't go. Next one. So do you see the disconnect? Unless you're honest. Christianity is not like that. Christianity is love the world, put yourself first, God, consecration, Matthew 6:33, they are all not important. All right, if you're honest to tell them that, then I can't say anything. But if you say, no, you must be holy, you must be godly, you must be godly seed, but you do the exact opposite thing in your own life at home, don't be near any millstone. Don't be near any water. That's all I can advise, because God is serious. Now, then we come to the last part. So we've considered now what is a witness. There can be fruitful witness or vain witnesses. Then we consider why we must not have vain witnesses, because we are to be fruitful witnesses, because our witnesses are meant to be used by God to transform lives, and because vain witnesses can destroy lives, and God will hold us accountable. Now we come to the last part. Now then, having understood all this, then the question is this: how can I ensure that I bear a testimony that is not vain? How can I ensure that? Lord, for the remaining of my life, at least now I realize this is what I am. I didn't realize that. This is what I am. Since this is what I am and shall be till I die and meet you face to face, because that is what you use your blood to save me for, then God, teach me how to bear a good witness. God, teach me. I hope that is your heart desire. Let me say a bit more before I move on. If you still cannot be convinced by the passages in Matthew, in Acts, and you still say, no, when I go home today, I don't really care. I'm not going to make much changes. you won't be interested in this part. How can I ensure? Number one, let's look at chapter 2. All right, we've seen some things from chapter 1, now chapter 2. Now he says this, why was it not in vain? Then verse 2, but even after that we had suffered before and were shamefully entreated, as ye know, at Philippi, we were bold in our God to speak unto you the gospel of God with much contention. Now what is Paul saying? He says, you saw and you know our testimony is not vain, not empty, not fake. Then he brought this up. Why was it not empty and fake? Verse 2, but even after we had suffered before and were shamefully entreated, as you know at Philippi. Something's happened to us in Philippi before we arrive in Thessalonica. That's what he's saying in verse 2. I can safely tell you that our witness is not vain because we were people like that before we came here. We were people that were real in our faith before we arrived here. We did not only pretend to act this way when we are here, but we were what we were before we came. What then must we learn from this? How can I ensure? First, you must be ready. This is the first part. First point. We must be ready to bear the cost to be a fruitful witness, to avoid being a vain witness. You must be willing to bear the cost. Paul is saying, we are real, and this is what we bore for our faith. A witness is one who has known the faith, that it is real, and therefore he lives it as a testimony to tell people this faith is real. They have witnessed that this faith, this God is real, is true, is the only true and living God. Because of that, they live as they should, as a testimony that this God is real. How real is this God? We find out from verse 2. We have suffered. They were willing to suffer. That is how real. Suffered before. And was shamefully entreated. What is shamefully entreated then at Philippi? Now, we have no time to turn there, but Acts 16, go back and read. He was referring to the events in Acts 16. He freed a damsel that was demon-possessed, and then the master of the medium, lost a very useful demon field tool, right? So he stirred the whole city against Paul and Silas. So in those account is two persons, right? So he says, look at verse 2, he says, after we, who is we? Who are we? That's Paul and Silvanus, these two persons. They suffered for their faith to bear witness. They did not compromise. They did not say, okay, we recant. But what did they suffer there? Now, Acts 16 tells us a few things. They were publicly stripped, naked. They were severely beaten with rods. They were imprisoned in inner cell. And their feet were put in stocks. These few things. What does it mean? What does it signify for us? We want to bear witness. Are we willing to go through that? Now let me describe to you what it means when they bore these things to be a witness. They were stripped, naked, to humiliate them. Are you willing to bear humiliation to be a witness? No, I don't want to dress so conservatively. I want to dress like the world, a bit immodest. I don't want to be, plain. I want to be attractive. If not, it's very embarrassing, very shameful. So we encourage others to be worldly, to be external focused, right? Because we are too embarrassed to dress like a Christian, to be plain Jane. We want to embroider our hair. We want to wear all sorts of things, paint our faces for men, whatever other things, all right? It was to shame them. Are we willing to bear shame? Embarrassment? I'm too ashamed in school. Everyone participates in this, but I should not. I'm so embarrassed. I'll be embarrassed. You know, if I don't work in this kind of job, and it's so embarrassing. If my children are not this and that compared to other children, so embarrassing. But to be a witness, those things should not be part of their life. Never mind. Too embarrassing if they are not like this or that. If they're plain when they go to church, doll them up before they go to church. Are we like that? Shame that to the point where I say, well, okay, let's move to the next one. What about being beaten with rods? Now, this is another Roman technique. It was one of a very brutal form of public torture. So first they shame them, they strip them naked, and then they torture them publicly to humiliate, not just to humiliate, but to inflict severe, not just inflict pain, but to inflict severe pain. Because the rods, they not only lacerate the external flesh, the rods will cause the internal injuries to occur. That is what it's meant to do. For their witness, they did not recant, they did not compromise, they did not avoid it. Now, very often, this leads to permanent. It's intended to cause permanent injury in the person. That is why they use this. Because if you use a sword, you just cut the flesh. But rods does both. It goes internal, it causes internal injuries. So when Paul says, you know, you saw, Paul is not saying he was complaining and bragging, but they probably saw all the open wounds. They probably saw the limp. They probably saw that he cannot sit in certain positions. You say, you knew. I was like that. We bore the testimony before we came here. Now, another thing about these injuries. They were often caused to maim body parts, permanently disable certain body parts. We suffer some aches and pains, not even for being beaten for our faith, just by, natural progression of life. We must bear the right testimony. Mourning, we've covered this repeatedly in Sinners Fellowship. Mourning, complaining, and just focus on this, this, always about health or someone's finance, or always about finance, or always about something. This is not the witness. This is self-witnessing. My life is so difficult. These people were beaten to that point, right? Paul called it light affliction. You know, that is the amazing part, and I'll come to that afterwards. Now, what else besides all this? They were then put in stocks. Their feet were put into stocks. Now, again, when people research all this torture that the Romans invented, now it is to spread the legs to the maximum, to cause maximum pain. Stretch the leg, and they are constantly in pain, and they lock it at the ankles. No wriggling room. And they'll be in constant pain. Naked, bruised, torn flesh, in this grotesque mess in their bodies, oozing with blood. Then they tie them up and let the pain continue. Paul's description is consistent with what people research about what the Romans do. For a witness. Now, not only that, they put them in the inner prison. That is where it is the darkest, and is unventilated, the most secure. Secure means they won't have any windows. It's unventilated. Full of just the prisoners defecate on the floor, rats, all sorts of germs and diseases in the room. That is the place they were locked up in because of their witness. So with all these bleeding body injuries, pain, torn flesh, stripped naked, and the soldiers, once in a while, they just come in because they can't respond at all. They just hit them again. Now, this was what Paul said, you knew, because you know what the Romans do to people, and that was his witness. Now, my point is this, not just to describe all this to you. The point is, none of us can say that we are going through this kind of crosses, bearing this kind of pain. Whatever it may be, I think we can be honest and say it's nothing close to what they went through, Paul and Silas, Silvanus. Like I said earlier on, 2 Corinthians 4:17, Paul says, but yet Paul calls it light affliction. But yet when they were singing in prison, singing, we are moaning, even for our little troubles in life and pain in life, because of our witness. Some is not even our witness, it's just what we will encounter in life. Singing, no, not singing, complaining. What kind of witness are we showing to people? God is not good. God let this thing happen to me. Right? Now then, from here, let us learn this when we start talking about be ready to bear the cost. It's real. Go back and start to analyze our lives. What do we need to give up? What do we need to make changes in our lives that will bring embarrassment to our pride? What is it that we need to make changes that, well, will bring a lot of inconveniences to our family life, our choices, in order to be a good witness to people in the church, because this is to believers. What are some of the troubles that I'm afraid and now I need to take on and bear to be better witnesses, to stir others, to be willing to go through all these difficulties as a family, as a single, as an elderly, to be willing to go all through all this? What kind of things do I need to bear so that they will not be complainers, murmurers, and just keep talking about the same thing about themselves? What do I need to do to change that so that they will learn from me the right thing, not the wrong thing? What are the changes that I need to make in my family life, in my children's life? What are the things now, if I avoid it, if I make changes, will bring lots of trouble, will be costly and even painful. But these are nothing compared to what we realize Paul and Silas went through in Acts 16. Then why am I not willing to bear these things to be a good witness? Just so that I eat less, have less nicer things, be less impressive to people? Then therefore I don't want to be a witness just because I have to give up my sinful things. That's even worse. So Christians, let us be real. You want to be a witness? You are a fruitful witness? Are you willing to bear the cost? Most of us are not. The smallest thing, we are already finding ways to give excuses. We don't care about how we stumble others in church. It will cost you. The second thing about how: do not have wrong motivations in being a fruitful witness. Don't have wrong motivations. Now, look at chapter 1, verse 5. Now he says, what manner of men we were among you for your sake. For your sake. Their witness was for the sake of others. Their witness was not so that for their own sake, so that we will be admired, we will be praised. It's for their sakes. Have the motivation that is purely to make others also want to be witnesses, that they will fulfill their chief end to glorify God for their sakes. Now, Paul is saying this. Look carefully, chapter 2, verse 2. After that we have suffered before. Why does he want to say the word before? I mentioned briefly just now. Before we came. before we came. Paul is saying this. We acted this way. Our witness was like that. It was not because, wow, now we're among Thessalonians. They are new believers. Or this is a new church. Very high chance of them being easily impressed by us if we do something like that. Let me show them. Paul said we were always like that. It's not because of this environment and this new change that we're in. What we must learn is this, when we want to be witnesses, don't have the motivation, in this situation, I can impress. Then I'll be a good witness. Or in this situation, these people, I'm not interested in impressing them. Then we do whatever we want. In situation where we know that this is easy, bearing this cross is easy for me. So I will bear this cross, and then we say, I'm bearing this cross. But when things are something that you do not want to give up, you avoid it. Motivations. Paul says before in this environment, before you people, before I came into this environment, before I met you people, before. This is who I am. Not to impress. Sometimes when it is easy to be a good testimony, then we brag. I helped this person. I did this. And we keep repeating it. So you must learn, right, to be like that. Watch your motivation. Watch your pride. Be brutally honest. Why you are bearing a witness? Is pride involved? To impress people, to make people admire us, to get praises. Paul was real. Silvanus was real. Now then, actually, one more thing. Look at chapter 2, verse 12. Do not have wrong motivations, right? Chapter 2, verse 12. Look at verse 12. Now I say, that ye would walk worthy of God. Now he says we behaved, in verse 10, our witness was like that. What was his purpose? That you would walk worthy. His aim was to stir others, not for pride, so that you will walk worthy of God. Not so that you will think I am walking worthy of God, but you will walk worthy of God. Very pure motives. Because he really wanted them to be witnesses that will glorify God, not to glorify themselves. Now then the last, what must I do? Last one. Have a clear conscience, have a clear consciousness that you are walking witnesses for God every day. Have that clear consciousness in you. Paul was very clear about that. In chapters 1 and 2, he repeatedly brought up about how careful he was among them. He says this in other epistles, how carefully we conducted ourselves. Paul was very conscious. I am light. I am salt. I shall be and must be witnesses unto Christ. He was constantly conscious of that. When being beaten, when being tortured, the thing that was so conscious in him is, I am a witness. I cannot fail God. If I do, then others will fail God also. I cannot, because I am saved for this purpose, to glorify God. Be very conscious of that. Means this, the moment you wake up in the morning, God, I am alive. I am to be your witness. When you step up into the world to go to work, to go to school, at home doing duties, in front of your children, when you're in church, I am here to be very conscious that I must stir others, not stumble them. Every choice you make, every word you say, don't think just because I do it and my family do it and you just blare it out. I just did this, I just did that. My children, I put them in this. You just blare it out. You are a light. Are you rubbing salt into this family, into these people, into this single to make them better? Or are you rubbing more and more filth into them? Sometimes it's very disheartening. I hear Christians, even in our church, they want to obey God. Then suddenly they get an advice from a so-called mature Christian. Talking, non-stop, just yakking away and saying things which made them question a lot of things. So Christians, please be conscious. That's consciousness number one. I am not dead because I am to bear witness for God today, not stumble. That is the first consciousness. Second consciousness is this. Look at chapter 1, verse 6. Verse 5 first. And he said, you know what manner of men we were? And then verse 6, ye became followers of us. Second consciousness is, I must not just seek to be stirred. I must stir. Paul says, you saw me live this way. Now you live this way, and as a result, what? Verse 8, for from you sounded. They became examples, in verse 7, to others. So Christian, do not come to church. Do not live your Christian life just always looking, well, who can stir me? I'm struggling. Who can stir me? And then we just keep talking, oh, this person stirred me, this person's family choices, this person single choices, this person elderly choices. They stirred me. You are light, not just them. You must seek to bear whatever is needed, make changes, whatever is needed in your own home to stir others. You cannot just come to be stirred and not aim to stir, because aiming to stir means you have to bear crosses. Changes in the family will become inconvenient, difficult, costly. Changes in your personal life will have crosses that you have to bear. Shame, pain, discomfort. They lived in a dungeon, the worst kind of dungeon. We are so afraid when we are not able to get a nice place to stay in, to work in a nice office, and we will compromise in order to have that. Right? So when we think about this, you can't just appreciate how others are stirring. You must desire to be a stirrer, but it will cost you. The final consciousness, which I've alluded to earlier on, you will either stir or stumble. You will either be a vain witness or a fruitful witness. No, nothing in between. Nothing in between can exist, simply because believers are sheep. You know, when Christ keeps talking sheep, you understand why he's likened us to sheep. Because we tend to follow. And we tend to follow the wrong thing as well. Sheep. Sheep follows, right? They just blindly follow. That's why there is no in-between. Sheep will either follow the right thing or follow the wrong thing. Be very conscious of that constantly, parents. I'm thankful for a parent who recently shared, our children, we are so afraid of what we say, how we behave before them, because we realize they actually notice things that we didn't even notice ourselves. Be conscious of that. Our manner of life before men counts, not just our words. There is nothing we need to bear to be a good witness that can be compared to these men. Now, with this consciousness, please realize this. The greater the cross, the greater the witness. What Paul went through, he said, you knew. It stirred them. Young Christians, they were willing to go to live through the whole city's uproar against them as well, and continued to live out the 5 C's that we learned as a young Christian. Why? Because the greater the cross they saw these people went through, the clearer the witness and the greater the courage they had. Christians, when you see the greater the cross that God brings into your life for you to be a witness, don't shrink from it. Don't shrink from it, because you will be the greater witness that God chose. But don't do it for pride, of course. We've learned that. Are you willing to bear that cross? It is very worth it, because Christ shed his blood to make you that. Let us turn to our final hymn. Shall we rise to sing our closing hymn? Shall we rise? 422. Shall we rise? 422. Let us sing this sincerely unto the Lord. 422. 2.